we're back. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, good. All right, so we're back. We're doing this hangout with some students from around the country, actually, who are interested in the environment. And actually, what I'd like to do for whatever the wider audience is maybe we could just, I'll identify myself. I'm Congressman John Sarbanes, or Sarbanes in Greek, from Baltimore, Maryland. But maybe we could go through the people that are joining, and you could tell me tell me your name and tell me a little bit about what kind of how you're connected to environmental work, what you're doing in that area, and then we can kind of go from there real quick. So, is Jim Karras one of the people on the line here? Let's see. How about Jackie Cremus?
Yep, right here. So I guess my connection, so yeah, hi everyone, I'm Jackie, I'm a senior at Princeton, and I'm sort of tenuously Greek American in that I'm from Greece, and my mom is half American, so I grew up in Greece, in Athens. So yeah, my sort of connection with environmental policy specifically has kind of been through my classes here. I've taken a bit of quite a few classes on climate change and been involved with the student groups here. And in general, I'm really interested in sort of approaching climate change from a policy level. So yeah, that's me.
Great. How about Petros Kasfikas from Boston University?
Hi everyone, my name is Petros. I come from Corfu Island, Greece, Boston University. My major is broadcast journalism and political science, and my connection with the environment is pretty much I have covered some environmental issues here in Boston, and my main focus is the Charles River and the Mystic River, which are two main rivers for Boston, and how the local authorities pretty much have dealt with these environmental challenges.
Terrific. Okay, and then we have Andrew Theodotou. Who's that?
Yep, that's me. My name's Andrew Theodotou, if you want to say it correctly. I'm a senior at Georgetown University in DC. As far as my connection to the environmental policies goes, I mean, most of my involvement has been in things like Habitat for Humanity, and like our Hellenic Association here has done. We hosted the Greeks Give Back competition a couple of years ago, and that was like a service project competition that some of our schools actually participated in, I think. So yeah, my role has been a little less directly involved with the environment, but I'm a business major here, majoring in international business, and it's always been something on my radar that I want to keep in mind, throughout whatever undertakings I go into in the future. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks for hosting this. Thanks for having us.
Okay, and then we have Ruth Vasilias.
Yes, hi. I'm Ruth Vasilis, in Greece, Eleni Vasila. I am a junior at the University of Maryland, and I am a political science and Spanish double major, and my involvement with environmental studies and things like that has been through classes, but additionally I am the representative, the legislative representative for the biggest school at Maryland, behavioral and social sciences, and through the student government we have an amazing sustainability committee that we're all very involved with. I also live in a living and learning program on campus called the Language House, where we do everything from compost to environmental education to everything of that sort. So thankfully all of the student organizations I'm involved with are very passionate about the environment.
Terrific. I'm doing an exercise here where I'm turning my mic on and off so it doesn't create feedback. So hopefully you can all hear me. So I appreciate everybody participating in the Hangout, and also anybody who may be watching us out there. I think the hashtag for this is HPS Hangout, and our Twitter handle is @HellenismServe, so that's something that you all can follow us on. We also have a Facebook page, HPS Hellenism in the Public Service Facebook page, and at the end of this Hangout I'm going to ask if you all can help us by kind of telling us what you're doing environmental-wise on that Facebook page, because it helps to generate more traffic around the environmental issues. But let me start kind of where I began before we had the glitch earlier on, and that is in the wake of celebrating Easter yesterday and Christos Aneste to everybody. I did mention that the ecumenical patriarch, who is the spiritual leader of 300 million Greek, or rather Orthodox Christians, including Greek Orthodox Christians around the world, and who resides in Istanbul, Turkey, has been known for many, many years as the Green Patriarch because of his commitments to the environment. In fact, he has hosted at least 2 or 3 major, like 3-day environmental symposia across the United States. One down in Louisiana, or rather, yeah, I think in Louisiana at one point. He's done another one out west. He's done them in other countries, and he's really garnered, I think, a very well-deserved reputation for his commitment to the environment. He, of course, brings the perspective that this is God's earth and that we should do everything we can to preserve it. I had the privilege a few years ago of presenting him with a certificate of membership in the No Child Left Inside coalition, which is something that was founded about 7 or 8 years ago, just as I was coming into office. I've been in Congress since 2007 and have been very interested in the environment the whole time I've been there, and before, really, because being from Maryland, of course, I have a special connection to the Chesapeake Bay. And there's a piece of legislation called the No Child Left Inside Act, and this is to promote environmental literacy and to encourage young people, students, to really become stewards of the environment, to embrace it and take ownership of the environment. And it would help to fund instructional programming across the country that integrates the environment into the curriculum in schools, and otherwise help connect young people to the outdoors and allow them to learn through experiential connection with the environment. So this coalition, called the No Child Left Inside Coalition, and if you Google NCLI, you'll find your way to a description of both the legislation and the coalition, now has over 2,000 organizations across the country that are supporting this legislation to promote environmental literacy here in the United States. And we created a certificate and made the Patriarch an honorary member of the No Child Left Inside Coalition when he was here about 4 or 5 years ago, and presented that to him in Annapolis, Maryland. So ever since I got into Congress, I've tried to exercise real leadership when it comes to the environment. Again, viewing Marylanders in particular as having a special responsibility for the Chesapeake Bay. But frankly, there are 6 states and the District of Columbia which have ownership of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And that number is about 17 million people. So to me, the way we improve the health of the bay, frankly, the way we improve the health of the environment anywhere in the United States, anywhere in the world, is that we have to develop good habits so that it becomes second nature for us to look after nature. And the generation that you belong to, I think, is probably the best positioned of any of us to take a leadership role, to kind of own this as we try to wrestle with climate change, as we deal with issues of fossil fuels and how that's contributing to climate change. I sit on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is a committee in Congress which has a lot of jurisdiction over these issues that affect the environment. And from that vantage point, I'm able to hear from witnesses on a regular basis who are talking about the threats to our environment these days. So I'm in a position where I'm eager to receive the input and the perspective that anybody has with respect to the environment, particularly people in your generation, because I think you're more connected to it than anybody. And I appreciate the relationship that you have with the environment. I appreciate all of the things that were mentioned at the beginning of the call that people are working on, cleaning up the rivers, committing themselves to a sustainable agenda, addressing the issues of climate change, and taking responsibility, personal responsibility, to reach out and build networks of support around those issues. So with that, why don't I throw it open? I'm sure you may have some questions or thoughts or you know, a few comments of your own before we sort of wrap things up. But I wanted to get some feedback or thoughts from you all. What you think I can do, if there's things that you think I should be doing that I'm not doing, or frankly, a pitch you might want to make to anybody who's on this call and watching it about how they can get involved locally in their own neighborhood, at their own school, on their own campus to try to promote protecting and preserving the environment. So with that, why don't I throw it back to anybody who has some thoughts or comments.
I guess I'll start out. I think that environmental literacy is actually the best thing that we can do in order to get everybody to just understand the importance of just the little part that each and every person can play in helping to create a sustainable place for everyone to live. One of the things that the Sustainability Committee in the student government here at Maryland has done is they do power shift, and they send 60 students from Maryland to a weekend in an environmental conference, and then those people become the campus advocates who then teach other people about the environment. We've recently had a sustainability pledge, which has reached over 400 people, where they get reminders of the things they've pledged to do and turn out the lights and clean up different things and compost. So yeah, again, I would just stress how important it is to just teach everyone and make everyone aware of the things that they can do each and every day.
Right, I agree with that too, and I think some creativity is good in that aspect. I mean, at Georgetown we have Health Education Services does a lot of like materials like that. One of the things they do is this thing called the Stall Seat Journal, where they put, basically, as it sounds, they put like an informational packet in like a display case behind the wall in the bathroom stall, which usually has like, you know, right now I think the one that's circulating is about how much water is saved eating vegan and vegetarian versus like how much water you actually use up eating meat, and how much like actual raising of meat uses up water and stuff. But it's just a cool way of like spreading that information and giving you some facts that you actually can internalize and use.
I had a question for you all. Sort of what are there sort of campaigns at your individual schools, and perhaps Mr. Congressman, you could speak to maybe the institution of Congress as well. Are there campaigns to sort of make those institutions themselves more sustainable? I know here we've had sort of water wasting kind of campaigns, sort of installing different kinds of technology, using, you know, more fuel efficient light bulbs, using, you know, even the water that we use in the restrooms and the sinks, sort of trying to reduce that by using sort of different kinds of mechanisms and gadgets, really, to improve the actual sustainability of the institutions themselves. I was wondering, do you guys have what sort of stuff is going on at your universities?
Well, I can tell you about Congress for starters. There is actually, over the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years, there's been a significant effort by the architect of the Capitol, who's the sort of presiding officer over the physical plant of the Capitol buildings and all of the office buildings that are occupied by senators and members of Congress, to try and, so they've brought in these companies that have environmental savings contracts where they put in different lighting and heating and HVAC systems that are more efficient. We've also had, and we've begun to see the benefits of that kind of greening of the capital infrastructure. We also tried to put in place some more sustainable measures in all the cafeterias on Capitol Hill with biodegradable, what do you call, flatware and forks and knives and spoons and so forth. Unfortunately, we got into a dispute. The Democrats were mostly interested in doing this. The Republicans, who I guess would accuse us sometimes of being more alarmist about climate change and the environment than is helpful in their view, they took the opposite. They thought it was going too far in terms of what we were doing in the cafeteria. So when the Republicans took over 4 years ago, the House of Representatives, the leadership immediately changed the whole practice, and we went back to plastic forks and spoons and knives and so forth. They were complaining that the ones we were using were breaking too easily. I don't agree with that. I think you can adjust your behavior so you can handle a fork that maybe is not as sturdy if it's the right thing to do for the environment. So that's actually a perfect example of the political battles that we have in Washington. It even gets to the level of like what kind of forks and knives and plates we use in the cafeteria, in the office building. But I'd be interested to hear if there's been green campaigns around that kind of thing on any of the other campuses.
At least we have an office who deals with that issues, sustainability BU as it is called. It has taken on various campaigns and initiatives, for example, for recycling, or they just built a new building and they were really proud that is eco-friendly. But according to my experience, what I see, really passionate and they are working really hard, but it's really difficult to inspire specific behaviors to the majority of the students on the campus, which is required for making this initiative works. So, as you said, I see this really important environmental education from a very early age, even before college, so students and young people can learn and respond to these initiatives.
I wanted to ask whether anybody, whether any campus has had an initiative where you organize a day where, for example, everybody tries to reduce their water usage by half in terms of flushing toilets or using tap water or whatever, in ways that the university could actually measure. And I don't know if any of you have thought about going to the sort of capital facilities managers of the campus and getting metrics on how much water is used, how much electricity is used, etc., in the average day, and seeing if you could create some kind of challenge for the students on campus to hit a target of reduction on a single day, just like picking a day and saying, this is going to be our environmental challenge day, and our goal is to reduce the water usage on that day by exactly half of what the average daily usage is, and see if you can hit that target. I don't know if anyone's tried that, but it'd be kind of an interesting experiment in collective action around the environment. It might also be a way of challenging your fellow students. The other thing I wanted to just ask you is, do any of you have the perception, and we won't go on too much longer here because I don't want to keep you all too late, but do any of you have the perception that the influence of big money on our politics is having an impact on legislation for the environment. In other words, do you feel that, for example, the oil and gas industry or the chemical industry, because they put a lot of money into political campaigns, have created a situation where it's hard for certain kinds of legislative or environmental legislation to move forward because those special interests have more influence than is good and healthy. Because I'm kind of addressing that issue as well, this issue of money in politics, and I think one of the places where it has the biggest impact is on the environment. And I didn't know whether students perceive this connection or whether that's something that really doesn't get on your radar screen. I'd be interested to hear anybody's thoughts on that.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, sorry, I just rejoined the call. My name is James Karras. I'm a senior at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And over the last year, we've had some global sustainable initiatives where each year the entire campus takes on some theme of sustainability. And this past year was water and all water-based initiatives for awareness for clean water for impoverished countries and for our reduced use here in America. So to answer your first question, Congressman, that within the dormitories, that there is a collective water use, and that so within your suite you can measure how much your suite has used for each month, and so that it's an active cycle within the dormitories that we can talk about it or we can actually measure how much water we're using. To answer your second question, I certainly think that big money has had a role in the way that our energy is put to use and our perception about alternative forms of energy. That if we're trying to, I think this example with what Carolina does of this collective use of water and for utilities in general can be applied to the entire country. That you see that the privatization of electricity and there's been the same way for the last century. Whereas some of the new forms of energy, where they're open source of solar panels or shared utilities, are some ideas that have gained traction, and a number of communities have taken them on. But it's something that the entire country, with your help and the constituents furthering, some legislation, that maybe we'd be able to get something passed, and that our energy and water cycles can be like the models we see in Eastern Europe, and everybody has affordable and great access to these necessities.
Well, I appreciate that, and I've done a fair amount of research about the amount of campaign contributions that come in to members of Congress over the last few years from different industries, whether it's the financial industry or whether it's the energy industry. And I can point to examples of pieces of legislation. There's something called the Toxic Substances Control Act, which was first passed in 1976, and it's the legislation that gives agencies the authority, federal agencies, the authority to know what kind of chemicals there are out in the stream of commerce. There are thousands and thousands of chemicals that are used every day. We only have good information on about 600 or 700 of them. And one of the reasons is we can't get this legislation updated and make it more current and give it more application and allow these agencies who ought to be regulating what chemicals are being used out there the oversight that they need. And one of the reasons we can't get that done is because there's so much dependence on the big money to run campaigns that when it comes time to vote on this kind of thing, we can't ever get it through. So I've launched something called the My Voice campaign, and you can learn about that by going to myvoicedoescount.com, which is all about how do we fight back against big money so that the voices of everyday people can be heard again. Because I think particularly when it comes to the environment, a lot of folks feel that their voice is not being heard in Washington and in Congress. And there's a lot of cynicism out there. And what I'd like to do is take the incredible energy that the environmental community has. You know, when you look at what people are doing with composting and recycling and water usage and all these amazing things that are creating collective action, if we could just connect one last dot for them and say, hey, you should also get connected to this fight against big money so that the legislation that gets made in Washington can actually support all the things that you're trying to do out there, that would make a huge difference. So before we wrap up, just a couple things. Everything that's been mentioned here tonight in terms of the things that you are involved in, I find incredibly inspiring. And as cynical as Americans are these days about their government, it can be easy for members of Congress themselves to slip into that cynicism also. The best way I've found, the best antidote that I've discovered for resisting that is, frankly, to talk to people in your generation and talk to them about environmental initiative, because that's where I think people are most jazzed and excited and connected. So what I love to do is have you all go to our Facebook page and post some of the things that you're working on, because the Hellenism in the public service theme is basically my effort to reach out to Greek Americans across the country and encourage them to tell stories about how they give back, not just to the Greek community, but to the broader society. Anyone who's been with the Greek community, involved in the Greek community, a member of the Greek community, knows we're pretty good about focusing attention on the stuff we're doing for our own community, but maybe we don't bring as much attention sometimes to the things we're doing to give back to the broader society. And I think we got a good story to tell, particularly young people like yourselves who are volunteering, who are serving, who are basically taking on responsibility that's broader than yourself. And so I think the perfect place for you to go tell some stories about what you're doing around the environment and how you're giving back to the broader society around the environment is at our HPS, our Hellenism in Public Service Facebook page. So at a minimum, anyone who's been part of the Google Hangout here, anyone who's had a chance to watch the discussion tonight and cares about the environment, is doing things to give back, please go to our Facebook page at HPS Facebook page and post something up there. If we get enough traffic there that's environmentally related, maybe we can figure out a way to sort of regularly promote that portion of the giving back piece of HPS, have a kind of environmental focus to it itself. Again, you can follow us on Twitter at Hellenism Serves. We'll try and do these things periodically, but I would ask you to also, if you're interested in this fight against the money out there, go to myvoicedoescount.com, and you can learn there about our efforts to model a different way of funding campaigns, one that puts everyday citizens back in charge. It's not an easy thing to accomplish these days, particularly because we have a Supreme Court that's taken us in a different direction. But I think that collective action by everyday people out there can definitely make a difference. So before we sign off, if there's any other thoughts or comments from anybody who's part of the Hangout, why don't you take this opportunity to share them?
I think everything that we touched on is very much so the theme of an Orthodox Christian and a Greek American, that we are a resilient people, and this is spring, this is a time of renewal, and so all of this conversation, I think, is very inspiring, and you know, I hope and pray that we go back into our own communities, and you know, we can do this at home, and then for our entire country. I think it's a very fruitful conversation that needs to be had, and it's not in vain.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you again, Congressman, for putting this together. I think it's a great great idea and a great way to get people really involved from all over the country.
Yeah, likewise, I just want to echo everything that my peer said, and just to touch on the political issue, I think that it's a shame that the environment is not something that has become bipartisan at this point, but I think that it's important in whatever we're doing and whatever policies we're making, and to always try to make sure that it's going to be something that we can always attempt to get both sides to be a part of, because at the end of the day, that is our system, and if we want to be moving forward, then we do have to have everyone on board. So I think that that is a good continuing goal as well.
Well, thank you all very much for participating. And on that last point that you made, there's nothing more bipartisan than the idea that the voice of the average person out there ought to be counted, that they ought to be listened to. And when I talk to people in my district and around the country, because I've been traveling around the country talking about this issue of the undue influence of big money, Republicans, Democrats, Independents all share this perspective that they feel like they've been kind of pushed onto the sidelines of their own democracy by big money that's buying influence, and they want to be back in charge. Everyday people want their government back. They want their politics back. We can have arguments about the environment. We can have arguments about climate change, but they shouldn't be arguments that have hundreds of millions of dollars being put behind them by groups like the Koch brothers and so forth. They should be arguments between, you know, everyday citizens out there, all of whom should have an equal stake in their democracy and in their legislation. So I think that people in the environmental community, and young people in particular, because you feel so passionately about this issue, can also help us fight this other battle to recover kind of our stake in democracy. And nobody understands democracy better than the Greeks do, because after all, we founded it in ancient times. So maybe we have a special responsibility to protect it in these times. Anyway, thank you all very much. We'll do this again. Take care.
So much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Bye.